Hi, everyone. We've set up this Being an Engineer podcast as an industry knowledge repository, if you will. We hope it'll be a tool where engineers can learn about and connect with other companies, technologies, people, resources, and opportunities. So make some connections and enjoy the show.
So rather than just rushing towards, hey, I am a engineer of whatever type, you could say, hey, I love solving problems. I love helping people. I love impacting whatever, sustainable development. I love looking at problems in cities or whatever it is. And I think we define ourselves in a different way.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Being an Engineer podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Stephen MacGregor. Stephen is a global expert in workplace health, well-being and performance with a PhD and master's degree in design thinking and virtual teams. Founder of the Leadership Academy of Barcelona with clients including Salesforce, McKinsey and Uber. Author or lead co-author of 6 books in the past 12 years, notably Chief Wellbeing Officer and Sustaining Executive Performance. He's a frequent keynote speaker and guest professor with experience in research and teaching at none other than Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, IEMD, IESE, and many other prestigious universities. Trained with Olympic athletes, Tour de France riders, and Ironman champions, international level duathlete and former national champion currently racing for FC Barcelona. Stephen, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Raf. Pleasure to talk to you today. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course. So are you talking to us from Barcelona at the moment?
Yes. Early evening here and in my home office in Barcelona, but just back from vacation, just getting into an easy week again.
Fantastic. And we haven't spoken Spanish much on the podcast, but I asked you before we got started that you told me that you were in Barcelona for the last 20 years. And I would like for our audience to hear your beautiful Spanish. So if I may, I'm going to ask you a question in Spanish. ¿Cómo está el clima allá en Barcelona en este momento? How's the climate over there in Barcelona?
Sí, no, está bien, sí, bastante soleado y mira, soy escocés, ya sabes, Raf, que me importa el tiempo después de sufrir tantos años en Escocia y por eso que vivo ahora en Barcelona.
That is fantastic Spanish. For anyone that speaks English, no, I'm telling you, like, you can't tell the difference. Like, he really seems like a person from Spain. He's got the accent down. So for anyone, I know this is not about engineering yet, but for anyone that wants to speak Spanish as a second language, Stephen is proof you can do it.
Muchas gracias.
Before we dive into the exact technical things, any advice that you may have for anyone that wants to pick up Spanish as a second language? What's the key?
I think it's just immersing yourself in that environment. Because if I think back to when I started learning a language at university, I was actually studying French for a couple of years, but I never spent any significant amount of time in France. So it never got beyond the very basic level. Spanish, I never studied it, via books or via classes. I just simply came here to live and I only had 1 or 2 words. And so you just immerse yourself in the environment every single day. And I think the second thing is that you're not afraid to make mistakes. So maybe this comes from my engineering background. It's something that maybe we can talk about, right? The importance of failure, the importance of experimentation and iteration, especially important for my own engineering background, which was in design thinking. But you have to just jump in. Don't be afraid of making mistakes, and that's the way that you learn. And that's the way that I accelerated my language learning in Spanish as well.
Absolutely. I came to the United States when I was 13, so English was my second language. Now I'm like 50-50. I don't know which one's my main language anymore, which may be a good thing. But I agree with that, the willingness to make mistakes and not be embarrassed about our mistakes. And I think a big aspect that I can speak to this is having a team of friends, coworkers, colleagues that can correct us when we make mistakes, because I'm always willing to learn and I want to learn from my mistakes. That's what helped me.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's give a context of, I read your bio, and this is out of the ordinary of what the usual guest that we have on the podcast, and I did that on purpose. Usually we have maybe a mechanical engineer, someone that's developing medical devices, and that's the field that I want to go into and develop my career into. But your bio is different. Could you give us maybe a 1-minute description of what it is that you do and what it is that you're most proud of that you do?
Sure. So I've been working, Raf, 20 years in predominantly in the workplace, but generally the field of health and well-being, and just making sure that people who work for a living, they can actually still strive for high performance, getting the results, but they don't compromise their health and well-being in the attempt. And this is health and well-being in many different dimensions. It could be physical, it could be mental, it could be emotional, it could be spiritual. And of course, with the whole shared experience that we've had of the pandemic in the last couple of years, mental health is of particular importance. So that's been my focus. So I'm not a practicing engineer, but I bring a very engineering-centric view of the world to my work. And I think like an engineer. And that has given me so much value in trying to get purchase on this field, which is very difficult. Health and well-being in the workplace in particular is a very tricky proposition. But I've been very proud over the years of having changed, if I can put it on a very basic level, changed a lot of minds. Because you start talking about the importance of health and well-being to people in business, and especially high achievers, and they think, that's not important. I'm not going to pay any attention to these things. I want to just get ahead in my career. But then you message and you package the thing in such a way that they change their minds, and it makes them healthier and happier and also higher performing.
Okay, 2 follow-up questions. What do you mean by think like an engineer?
So I think I take a very systematic view of the world, and I look at problems and I break them down into their constituent parts, and I try and tackle them. So it's a very human-centric problem that I'm dealing with. It's looking at the daily lived experience of people in business, and very much drawing on my design thinking expertise. So my first degree was a master's in product design engineering, and then the PhD was in engineering design management. And I studied at the Institute of Design in Stanford. And so you look at the kind of experience journey, let's say, of a target in many ways in innovation projects, and you try and uncover pain points for these people. So for me, rather than looking at an innovation project or a marketing campaign, which is often the focus of design thinking, you look at people in business and you think, okay, they're working long hours, they are trying to get results, maybe they have too much stress in their lives, and you identify pain points and you try and identify parts in their experience every day that you can redesign. So it's about looking at that experience, you're breaking down the problem in a very human-centric way, you're re-engineering their lives, or you're redesigning their lives. And that, for me, it came from my design thinking background, and it came from thinking about life and thinking about problems in the world around us as an engineer.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's what I suspect, that systematic approach to break down problems. So let's dive into that. You said you're a global expert in workplace health, well-being, and performance. Maybe most of the people listening to this podcast, we work for a living. There are also students listening. But for those of us that work for a living, that go to the office, what specific tips can you give us so we have healthier lives?
So this could mean different things to different people, Ralph. And it, often depends on, again, what are these pain points? So does someone feel that they are overwhelmed with work? Is it stress? Is it anxiety? Is it a sense of isolation? And so depending on what those pain points are, then we normally work with people to try and, change some of that daily reality. And it can often be the simple things. So it could be that a lot of negative emotions, for example, could come from living a very highly sedentary life day in, day out. So a lot of what we do with people, we say, look, don't forget about movement in your normal day. So rather than just sitting at your desk all day and being confronted with overwhelming amount of emails, go for a walk around the office, have a conversation with someone rather than picking up the phone or sending an email. When we move blood around the body. It gives us energy to our brains. We're more inspired. We get more creativity. And Stanford research backs that up, actually. When you walk, you improve creativity by 60% on a qualitative and a quantitative level. So combating a sedentary life could be one thing. Taking more frequent breaks could be another. The power of mindfulness, maybe reaching out and developing friendships in the workplace. So there's a whole many different things. And again, it comes from that systematic approach that I've taken to human health, well-being and performance, that we're all different. And of course, our life changes and the context changes. So that need could be different from one day to the next. But the key thing, and just to finish on this, is that it doesn't have to be a huge thing, right? If anyone's got any issues in terms of their own mental health or their performance, it's often the tiny change that makes the huge difference. And we all have something called a keystone habit. So it's having that explorative approach, trying to find out what really does work for you and just putting it into action and see what works. And if it doesn't work, try something else.
To my understanding, the first step in solving a problem is identifying the problem. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Question is more important than the answer.
Okay, so that leads me to my question, which is, how can one self-identify what the pain points are?
So you've got a couple of options. I mean, we work in a coaching capacity with our clients, and that's one thing. Regardless of what level you're at, I think many organizations now are democratizing coaching. It isn't just for senior staff. It is for everyone in an organization. You've got so many new startups that are coming on the scene that actually have these one-to-one coaching services at a very accessible price point. So anyone can reach out these days and have a coach to help them along. But the other one is just thinking about having that dialogue with yourself and giving yourself space, because we're all so busy that we don't often stop and think, how am I feeling? How am I performing? What do I need? So it's just taking that pause. And a couple of things that we recommend normally is to think about even journaling, right? So even if you think of an engineer, and maybe you have an engineering logbook, or you have an engineering, some means of recording the work that you do, having a kind of personal journal whereby you take maybe a pause at the end of a day and you note down how your day went, that gives you that space and it allows you to identify some of these pain points. And so what we did, you've mentioned a couple of my books in the introduction. My most recent book, which is just out, called The Daily Reset, is about facilitating these day-to-day changes. But it's not just a book. It's not just giving people information. It's a journal so that they can engage with that content and try and find out these questions for themselves. And the power is in that approach. The power is in that curiosity that we all need to have on a daily basis.
Very interesting. How does one, the thing is, like, we're all so busy and people have a list of books they already want to read. If they're like me, I have a list of 100 books I want to get to and I never have the time. Once I finish my day, maybe I'll read like some pages, but then adding another book for people to read, if you want to go in depth, that's something we can suggest. But if they don't have the time to read a book yet, if you can give them maybe 1 or 2 golden nuggets, take-home points, how does one go about journaling properly?
So, first of all, in the book, I agree with you. I don't read. I don't feel I have the time to read. The thing, without over promoting this new book of mine, it isn't a normal book graph. It's a page a day reflection. So I was inspired by something called the Daily Stoke, which has been out for a couple of years, from Ryan Holiday and Stephen Hanselman. And that got me through the pandemic. And that is 366 nudges. So basically every day you've got maybe 150 or 200 words to read. I would wake up, I'd make coffee, I'd read the day's reflection, and it gave me enough purchase to get going, and it mobilized me to action. So I copied that format. So in the Daily Reset, there are 12 themes of well-being: movement, nutrition, purpose, ways of working, leadership, and many more. And basically you spend 2 minutes a day reading. And that's all you need to do. So it's a low bar. We're overwhelmed by information these days from so many different factors that I felt this was the way that we could mobilize change. You're not expected to read in depth a book at one sitting. You just spend 2 to 3 minutes a day, and that is enough to mobilize you to change. moreover than that, which has been working very well since it's been released in the last month, is that you just need the space. That's all you need. The magic happens. You need tools. And as engineers, we recognize the importance of tools. The tools that you need here, you need a good pen. That's what I believe in. I've always been very proud of my pencils when I was drafting and engineering and sketching in design, and a good quality pen. So, it's the simple stuff. A good quality pencil, or preferably pen, and a good notebook, right? A clean notebook, something that you can start afresh with. That's going to be your new reality. And all you need to do is give yourself a space and a time in the day when you've got some headspace, when you're not going to be distracted, when you're not going to be overwhelmed with push notifications and other things and other people asking for you. Identify that time. It only needs to be 5 minutes. You have that book, you have that pen, and the magic happens. And that's all you need.
Okay, so 2 things to recap on. What's the name of your book that goes over this daily page exercise?
Sure. It's called The Daily Reset, 366 Nudges to Move Your Life Forward.
366 nudges, okay. Perfect. And it was inspired by something called the Daily Stoke, correct?
That's right, Raf, yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure. It's really interesting when an author writes a book, what was the inspiration? So thank you for sharing that with us. And this Daily Stoic, I'm on the website right now. Is it by any chance, I'm Catholic. I think religion is very important. Is it any religion based or no?
No, I think it's just Stoic philosophy. A lot of it came from the times of ancient Rome. So Marcus Aurelius, former Roman emperor, he wrote a book. It was his own journal. It was called Meditations when he was the Roman emperor back in the day. And I think, now or then, there's never been a more chaotic place than ancient Rome. And basically the difference of Stoic philosophers compared to, for example, Zen Buddhists is that you would find peace on atop a mountain and you would escape from society. The difference with Stoics is that they were doers. They were in the middle of the chaos. And I think engineers also are characterized by their doing. We are pragmatic people. We don't just think about things. We do. We action. And that's the key from Stoicism. And I think there's a nice link there between Stoic thinking and being an engineer. And it sits like many other things that I've looked at over the years in terms of the whole mindfulness space and other related areas such as heartfulness. All these things are very important for our own health and well-being. They can sit atop different religions, right? And you don't need to divorce this philosophy from any belief or any faith that you have.
Okay, perfect. So also reading your bio, you're the founder of the Leadership Academy of Barcelona. Could you tell us more about the Leadership Academy, what it is that you do?
Sure. So, it's essentially, it's a vehicle for working with some of these organizations that we've helped over the years. It's a boutique management consultancy and leadership development company. And we based in Barcelona, but we work around the world. We deliver programs in both English and Spanish. And we often, inspired by my design thinking background, we often, the more common product that we use to improve health and well-being of people is small group workshops, because we feel that learning is an active thing. It's not a passive thing that you just learn in books. So we make that very action oriented in small groups, and we follow up with coaching circles and individual coaching. And then the other key, because a lot of leadership development and training, you go and you do the training, you go back to the workplace, you're maybe enthused for the first day. You get to day 3 or 4, and certainly by the next week, you've forgotten about everything. So often what we ensure that we do is that we have continual touch points. So after they have the training intervention, when people get back into their workplace, we try and keep that connection there so that they can actually apply some of the things that they've learned, but within the chaos that they're going back to within their organizations.
See, it all makes sense. I think this is a good moment to take a quick pause and tell our listeners that teampipeline.us is where you can learn more about how we help medical device and other product engineering or manufacturing teams develop turnkey equipment, custom fixtures, and automated machines to characterize, inspect, assemble, manufacture, and perform verification testing on their devices. So we're here with our valued guest, Stephen MacGregor. And a follow-up question I was going to ask you is, you said how big is your team?
So we're just a small team. We're 6 or 7 people, and they help me social media, marketing and all these different things. Most of what we do is we partner. So, because of my background in teaching, I still have affiliations with different business schools. I still have an affiliation with professional services company. And so that's the way that we also generate leads and work with new organizations. I don't really have an interest in growing a huge kind of practice around this, because the key is, I think, the agility and keeping it at a nice scale. Because this is the challenge with health and well-being. If you are, overwhelmed yourself, you lose the power of that message. So if I'm in front of a class and I'm trying to convince them of the importance of sleep, but I'm visibly sleep deprived myself because there've been too many programs that I'm trying to run, then I lose the power of that message. So I'm very conscious of my own work-life balance and the impact that I'm trying to have. So we try and scale in other ways, through e-learning, through books, through podcasts, and different things like that.
Well, congratulations on bringing your vision to reality and having a team of 6. I see that, how can I say this? It's not easy to get clients from large companies like the ones that you've worked with, Salesforce, McKinsey, Uber. Could you give us maybe some insights into, of course, you have the relationships from teaching at the universities and already the credibility that you bring. But at the same time, how does one go about getting a sale and getting the attention of a large company like Salesforce and Uber to host a workshop?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Raf. It is those personal connections. Credibility is hugely important. So if I think of all of these connections that I've had with these large companies, there's been no cold contact. There hasn't been one. There have been executives who have been on the courses that I've taught at universities, and then it goes word of mouth. The key, I think, more over and above, that advantage that I have from teaching at different schools, is that when you have the connection, you just build the relationship. And I think I came to that realization a little bit later than I should have, because I always thought, as long as you focus on the excellence of the product and the service, that's all you need. It's not enough. People want to get along with the people that they're working with. Often, good enough is good enough. It doesn't need to be hit out the park every single time. So when you make that connection, you build the personal relationship, right? I mean, you try and, be a friend with that person, right? And you don't always just try and hard sell them on the product. You actually ask them about their own life, and you show curiosity about their own situation. And if you build the relationship, then everything else comes from that. So I think that's probably the most important thing.
No, I think we're getting to something. I'm digging to get to something, and I'm very grateful that you share these insights with us. You mentioned you realized this later on in life. How late ago did you realize this?
Yeah, I guess so I've been working in kind of the well-being space for 20 years. I'm now 45. So, I was a visiting researcher at Stanford when I was 24 years old, finishing my PhD. And for the first 10 years, it was all about excellence for me. I just thought, hey, I'm just going to be the best at what I do. And then there came a point where it just wasn't flowing. I thought, what's the matter here? I'm getting, top marks. Every program is so well evaluated, but there didn't seem to be that follow-on flow. And then I realized I just had to make more of an effort on a social level and just get to know people a little bit more. So for the past several years, I've tried to do that. I don't know if it's just being a bit more relaxed about it. And I think when you get a bit older and you're further in your career, you just naturally become a bit more relaxed. Whereas when you're starting out, maybe you're really super ambitious and you're really trying to hit that hard. So maybe that's just a natural dynamic when you get a bit older, right? But that's the realization that I came to, and in those past several years, it's bore a lot of fruit. It's been really advantageous, and more than the business, Raf, I've had a lot of pleasure out of building these relationships as well. And I realized that my own health and well-being is just as important when I'm doing this work. It's not just about getting paid or getting the next gig. It's actually about working with people and enjoying working with them at the same time. It's the experience of work.
This is a very genuine conversation we're having. Thank you for opening up so much. So I want to see, there's engineers are known for maybe being a little more analytical and technical, and really stereotyping here for all the listeners, and maybe not the most outgoing or relationship driven individuals. So sometimes we need a little bit of help going outside of our comfort zone. So that's understood and known. Of course, I'm really stereotyping there. But what would happen if somebody has a niche? Let's say that this is an engineer that wants to start a company, and they're very good at a specific niche, and they have a couple workshops, and they teach the skill, and the reviews are great, kind of like in your trajectory. And they have maybe a couple contacts in the industry. What do they do now that they've solidified that they're really good at what they do? They've gotten some feedback that people appreciate and are having value from their knowledge. What does one do? Like schedule a coffee date, ask the other person how they're doing. How do you make a soft sell? How do you do that?
Yeah, look, first of all, if it goes counter to the person's own character, that's a tricky one, right? So I think, and if you're being stereotypical, and maybe there's the more analytical side, and people don't find it easy to bring their emotional side to work, then that has to be taken very gently, because you don't want to lose authenticity, right? And then the whole thing becomes uncomfortable. And then if you if you have that coffee date, or if you just pick up the phone, then it's hugely awkward, and the net result is that you go backwards. So I think we need to stay true to our own nature, right? And maybe if someone is conscious of that being a limiting factor, you want to try and round off the team with other different personalities, I think, right? So you have someone, if you don't feel that you're a very kind of extrovert or interpersonal or social person, then that's fine. Many successful and leaders even now, research is showing that a lot of introverts are making the most successful and high-performing leaders. It's not just for extroverts. But you round off the team, and you have different profiles in the team. I think that's hugely important. And regarding concrete actions with people, look, it just depends, right? I think you just open the channels. You don't have to force the issue of, hey, let's get a coffee. It could be. Or you could, a couple of messages on WhatsApp, you share a joke. But I think the key is that you show curiosity about the other person. So you show that it's not just transactional, that you're not always just want to get something from them, because people can see through that. But you actually just talk to them and you say, hey, how are you doing? How are you finding work recently? Is there anything I can help you with? At the end of the day, you get clients because they want help with things. And if you can help them, they will hire you. And I think that's the key.
I think you hit it right on the head. That's true. I can speak from my previous experience as an entrepreneur. I had a mobile application, and I think the best sales came when I just genuinely said, I want to help. And that's when people started signing up. Yeah, this is such a good conversation. Let me see. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
No, it's been a good conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I always enjoy digging into the attic and seeing what's there. So, no, I've appreciated this conversation. I think we've covered some nice points.
Okay, my question came to mind. And my question is, is there something called over there in Europe a realtor, somebody that sells houses? Do you have realtors over there?
Yeah, we call them estate agents.
Estate agents, perfect. So I had an acquaintance of mine. a business acquaintance of mine that became a friend. And I bought a house a couple of years ago, and I used another realtor. And I posted that on social media, like I was happy, hey, I bought this house. And then my friend reaches out to me. He's like, oh, hey, I didn't know that you were looking for a house. I'm a realtor. I could have helped you. And I wondered, well, they never told me that. So then I wonder, what's the balance? Like, how much should I tell people that I do in case the need comes up? They know to contact me versus not even bring it up. So there's like a balance there. Any advice on how to create that balance?
I think rather than being defined by your role, you're defined by your passion. So if you think about when you meet someone for the first time, and this happened to me last week on vacation. So we went skiing in the French Alps. It was a wonderful week, and you're going to meet new people. So when you start getting, conversant with new people, the conversation often goes to, what do you do, right? And I think that's a very old way of defining ourselves. And sometimes nowadays, it's not easy to define what we do, right? It isn't just clean roles. It's more than, we're more than our jobs, of course, but our jobs are also difficult to define. So I think an easier way is thinking about, why. If you get to the work from Simon Sinek, it's about why you do what you do, not what you do. People buy why you do it, not what you do, but also just about your passion as well. So rather than just rushing towards, hey, I am a engineer of whatever type, you could say, hey, I love solving problems. I love helping people. I love impacting whatever, sustainable development. I love looking at problems in cities or whatever it is. And I think we define ourselves in a different way. And I think if we do that and we don't just look at titles and role description, it gives us that balance.
I think you will always be a part of me, Stephen. I mean, I really mean this, because I'm going to take what you just said now for the rest of my life. Anytime somebody asks me what I do, I'm going to answer with what I'm passionate about, the problems that I'm passionate about solving. Of course, I'm going to condense it to like 20 seconds. So I have like a canned response. But this has been very helpful for me in my career, at least. So I really appreciate that, Stephen. Well, how can people find you?
So, yeah, I'm on socials. I'm on, LinkedIn, mostly Twitter, all of the above. So I think people can find me there. And the website of the book is dailyreset.me. That's dailyresetaltogether.me. And all the details are on there for the book and getting in touch with me.
Absolutely. We'll have the website link in the show notes below. It's been a pleasure having you, Stephen, on the show. I really appreciate it.
Likewise, Raf. Have a great rest of the day. Good to talk to you.
I'm Aaron Moncur, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing turnkey equipment, custom fixtures, and automated machines, and with product design, visit us at teampipeline.us. Thanks for listening.